Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to our Saturday upgrading commander build video here in World Warships, where today we're going to be looking over the new Tier 7 premium Pan-Asian battleship, the Teng, something like that. And so we're going to go over the armor, we're going to go over the commander, upgrades, combat signals, and the works. So with that being said, let's just hop right into it and not take too much time here. So first off, what type of battleship is the Teng? Well, it's kind of funny because I covered this in the last two videos and particularly the Friday highlight video yesterday. It's essentially a SYNAP, especially maybe it would help as an example. Let's just take away all the exterior stuff. And I mean, it's literally, it's a SYNAP, right? Just a few differences, which again, I covered yesterday. So then you're like, oh, it's like a tanking mid to maybe closer range battleship. But the way that the ship works is that it's revolved more around like kind of a sniper SYNAP or sniper battleship. Is the best way I can figure it. So you're playing more mid-range to long-range with this battleship. So when you kind of understand how the ship is designed, so to speak, then you kind of want to build into that avenue versus like, hey, it's a SYNAP, let's just make it a tanking SYNAP when it's not necessarily meant to be played in the same way as SYNAP is. Now, in terms of our armor scheme, there's a lot of different things going on here. So you can see we have 26mm nose, but then it turns into a 30mm icebreaker and 30mm icebreaker foreign armor belt. The deck, 26 here, 26 there. So that's all the same across the ship. Even when we go back to the stern, 26 to, again, a 30, pretty similar to the front. But then on the side, we have a 100mm armor belt, which drops into a 300mm armor belt. And then our side plating torpedo protection is 32mm. And then we start stripping some things away here. And there's your Citadel armor. So it's 100mm. So you can actually see it's got a couple of plates that will actually have to pass through. Put this back on to get to your Citadel. So you can be Citadel definitely from the side. I think the other thing you have to watch for is depending on how far shells are out, if they, more dropping in more vertically through your deck, because you don't have a lot of deck armor. It's this 26mm, rip that away, then it's a 70mm. The other thing that's we really have to be mindful of, actually, this happened in the first impressions video. If you're kiting away, the main battery guns have to do really good kiting angles, but because of this 26mm plating here, it's actually totally feasible to like take a 406mm shell or greater, maybe even the 380. I'm not sure, but at least I know can confirm with a 406 that you can eat a Citadel from the stern when you're kiting away, as it kind of just gets caught up in here as it steeps down into your Citadel. So this means the ship has a little bit more difficulty at Tier 8 and especially at Tier 9, where you see those larger main caliber guns much more present. And I mean, we have 406s here on the SYNAP itself. So even opposing SYNAPs or other Tier 7s that have 406s, and likewise, you have to be mindful of with the armor scheme. But if you're able to rock the belt armor really well in trolling people, no issues there. So that's good. Another thing to make mention of is in typical Soviet battleship style, but this is Pan-Asian, is you have strong gun mount armor. So you can see 400mm on the front, side, and back, 200 on top. The barbette armor has 375 from what is visible. So you really don't have to worry about your guns getting knocked out. I don't think I've had my turrets knocked out yet from my playing with the Teng, but we'll have to see. In terms of modules, there's nothing to upgrade here. So what you get is the same reload time as SYNAP, 33 seconds, excuse me. 180-degree turn time, because we took grease the gears on our commander, is from 60 down to 50 seconds. HE shell damage, 5,850. We get slightly less AP shell damage here on Teng versus SYNAP, 12,000 rather than 12,500. I'll talk more about the accuracy of these guns in a moment. When we talk about the hull, with 65,000 hit points. Gunfire control system, we get a longer main battery gun range than SYNAP. You have 18.8 over, I think, 17 point something of what SYNAP has. Our propulsion is 100,000 horsepower, 27 knots, but with the ceramic, which I do recommend running, If you're playing randoms ranked PvP, 28.4 knots, so a bit better there. And the first slot, you can see here I've taken a special upgrade. It's the Spotting Aircraft Mod 1. This is available for 17,000 coal, or I think if you use like what's the 25% coupon, it's 12,750. So I do recommend using that coupon. I'll just take you into the armory just to show you what those look like in case you're new to the game and you're not so certain of what I'm talking about. I'll back out here to customizations, go to upgrades. You can see them all here. So Spotting Aircraft Mod 1, plus 30% on the Spotting Aircraft consumable action time. And I open up the coupons and you would see right here, it'll be refreshed in 21 hours, but it's 25% off. I paid full price for it just to try to help illustrate the significance of this with the first impressions in yesterday's highlight video. I think this is the best one to go for if you're willing to make the coal investment, because what this allows you to do is that it pushes our high precision spotter. I'll talk more about this. It's a really, really good to have here with the Teng. But you want to get the most out of your high precision spotter because of the negative 10% on the main battery shell dispersion, which means tighter shell groupings. And that pushes up to 71.5 seconds. So that means we can squeak out 3 salvos because we have a 33-second reload time. So pop the plane, fire a salvo, and you're going to get 2 more salvos before the plane goes back down, assuming you've popped it at a good time. There's a bit of a pressure because you don't really have, you only have like maybe 2 seconds-ish between each time your main battery guns reload to like get it off in time. Otherwise, you can only still get like 2 salvos out of it if you're slow about it. So you need to be fast and quick to get all 3 salvos off. That's the only downside. But we get 3 accurate salvos, which is really what this ship is built around. If you don't have the coal, you don't want to make that investment right now, then I'd say just go for the main Armaments Mod 1. It's really only the ideal one to take here. Just reduce the risk of your main battery becoming incapacitated. You improve the survivability and the repair time. But again, they're 400mm gun mount armor all around, and then the 200 on the top, 375 on the barbettes. So it's like, you probably don't necessarily need it, but if you're going to get any of these 2 for the credits, then still take main Armaments Mod 1 because this is a main battery functioning ship. It doesn't have torpedoes, it doesn't have secondaries, so you want to keep your armament going. Otherwise, this one's really good, and I'll talk a little bit more about it when we get over there. Second slot, Damage Control System Mod 1. This is just going to reduce the risk of you catching fire by -5%, risk of flooding -3%. You don't really need this. The engine room protection, more like cruisers and destroyers, is typically where you'd see this, or submarines even. The third slot, this is where things kind of begin to, well, we're already shifting, because I don't think Synop gets a spotter plane, but we're shifting here. And normally when you have such an abysmal 180-degree turn time, typically you always go through the main battery mod 2, right? But the way Wargaming again has presented this is that it's a Synop, but it's more about, it has more accurate main battery guns. So if that's kind of the direction that Wargaming is pushing the ship, then it makes much more sense to take the Aiming Systems Mod 1. I mean, you can see they even have it as a recommended upgrade here. Mainly because this improves your maximum main battery shell dispersion by -7%. And you always have this where on the spotter plane, it's -10% whenever the high precision spotter plane is activated. So these 2 together, you get -17% on your horizontal and vertical shell dispersion. I'll try to put here on the right side of the screen what it looks like without Aiming Systems Mod 1 and then with Aiming Systems Mod 1. And then I think I should be able to activate the high precision spotter and show you what that looks like. So probably 3 options on the right side of the screen here. Otherwise, you just get a slight buff on your secondaries. But I think overall, this is the best one to go for. You just really have to be mindful when you're turning. You can't out-turn your guns. You have a tighter turning circle radius here on the Teng over Synop. It's 840 versus I think over 900 on Synop. So it is possible to out-turn your guns. So just be mindful of that. And try to, when you're using the high precision spotter, you want to make sure like, oh, I've got a target rich environment. Even if one goes dark, I have another target I could quickly shift to and open up on. Yeah, that's the only one I would really recommend the best here. I mean, yeah, you could take a main battery mod 2 and maybe you're getting your turret time down to like, I don't know, closer to 40 or something. But really, this is where it's at if you want to get the most out of the damage potential out of the ship. The fourth slot, I've taken the damage control system mod 2. It's very typical to take this on most all battleships. There's a few exceptions. You know, the Los Andes is kind of this newer battleship with, you know, that has, or Libertad, where you're taking the rudder shift because it has an amazing rudder shift. We don't really have an amazing rudder shift here at 12.9. Other battleships, maybe like Schlieffen, you'll take the propulsion mod 1. Parts of me kind of wonder about this ship in the sense of, you know, this wouldn't make sense, I think, in my opinion, to run on Synup because Synup's about more mid-range to close range. Maybe you're tanking for your team, you are more closer to maybe cap objectives, so you're trying to soak up as much tanking, so to speak, for your team. So this makes a lot more sense. Well, this is more like mid-range and back, mid-range to long-range battleship because of it being more sniper-oriented. Like, you're not a first-line battleship, you're kind of almost like the second-line battleship because you're really playing around your main battery, you're playing around your high-precision spotter. So there's a possibility that I'm going to recommend with the commander build, like Brisk. If you were to take Brisk and you're kind of playing more that mid to long range, I could see the potential in this. I might test it out myself. The one thing with Synup is that it's just so slow to get anywhere. Where if you take this and it's more this mid to long range battleship, maybe there's a little bit more value here. I'm still playing with the ship a bit more, so I might end up testing that out. But otherwise, it just depends on, you know, if you're playing close, then you're going to want damage control system mod 2. If you're playing more mid to long range, then maybe this begins to have more value. But yeah, we'll have to see. I'm leaning towards this, but I need to try that out probably here. Yes. Let's see. So that covers that because we don't have fifth slot. So let's talk about armament. High explosive shells. Your reload time on them, again, is 33 seconds. They're 406s. We do 5,850 damage. In yesterday's clip, you actually saw me get an arsonist in one of the battles that we were bottom tier in on the Massachusetts, because they have a 41% chance of causing fire on a target. So it's quite reasonable that you might be switching between high explosive and armor piercing frequently because of that higher fire chance. You know, if it was something more like around 20%, then it'd be like, maybe you're not firing a high explosive as much. But this kind of changes things up a little bit, if you will, when you're kind of more this mid to long range battleship. You pin 6 to 8 millimeters here with this as well. That's nice. Armor piercing, again, for 6s, you do 12,000 maximum damage. You can see the shell velocity is the same, 767 meters a second. So you can definitely punish broadsides, certainly with the ship as illustrated in yesterday's video. Other armament is a depth charge airstrike. So reload time of 25 seconds, 2 flights, 1 aircraft per attacking flight, and there's only 1 bomb per payload. You do damage of 3,400, and you can reach out 9 kilometers away. So that's helpful. Definitely better than like a 6 or 7 kilometer range. I think Wargaming's kind of taking steps with other battleships in the game to make sure that they have more of a longer range depth charge airstrike, like the Massachusetts and Musashi. I think they're bumping up in the future update, as this is update 13.11. I don't remember right now. Wait, if I just hit exit, yeah, 13.11. Alright, sometimes it's rough trying to remember everything. Going on to consumables, it's pretty standard here. It's 15-second action time. It's not a longer duration. Sometimes you can see other battleships have like a 20-second, and then you'll see them take something like the damage control party mod 1 to improve because it's plus 40. Here the cooldown time is 76.8 seconds. Normally it'd be 80 seconds, but to show you a brief glance of my commander, it's because I have the emergency repair specialist. When we're running this unique commander, he has an enhanced cooldown time. I think otherwise it's -3%, but -4% with him. So that's good. We have repair party plus 325 HP per second, action time of 28 seconds, cooldown time of 76.8 seconds. Currently have 3. Goal is to be able to get 4. If I take the India Delta, it's going to increase the amount of HP we can restore. So you can see we go from 325 to 390. Really good to take in randoms, ranked PvP meta, if you will. And then we had the high precision spotter. So this does, normally like your spotter plane will just do like a plus 20% on your main battery firing range, but Wargaming introduced this different type of planes and consumable with the newer Japanese Battleship line, referencing, I'm afraid I can't remember the name of them right now, the Bungo line, Adatara and Yamahari. So that's something more recent Wargaming has done. Where I think the lower tiered ones, it's plus 10% on the main battery firing range and minus 10% on the maximum main battery shell dispersion, as you see here. So with the spotting aircraft mod 1, which I already talked about, we get a 71.5% action time and a cooldown time of 120 seconds. So it's going to be 2 minutes before this comes back off cooldown time, and 5 of them as a whole. The one thing we can change here that I would recommend running is November Foxtrot. It's going to reduce your ship consumable preparation and reload time by -5%. So now you see a 73-second cooldown time on our damage control party, a 73 here on the repair party, and 114 seconds here on the high precision spotter. So we shaved off 6 seconds essentially here. So that's helpful to get your plane back up more quickly. Other things to take into account here in terms of our signals. Well, you know, they've taken away detonation, so you don't have to worry about the Juliet Charlie combat signal. But here at the Charlie Kylo combat signal, if I open up survivability, 65,000 hit points. If you're playing a lot of the PvP meta, you're kind of like most players are just going to run this now. 68,250 because it's a plus 5% on ship health. It's kind of like survivability expert, which used to you could take on the battleship commanders, and then Wargaming's like, it's stupid for battleship players to take it. We're yoinking it, and I kind of agreed with that, where it makes more sense on like cruisers and destroyers. But now you can get a little more hit points out of your battleship. So I would recommend running that. India Yankee and Juliet Yankee. So you're getting a -20% reduction on the fire extinguishing time and -20% on the flooding recovery time. These two combat signals work well in synchronizing with the damage control system mod 2. So you are able to weather the storm, weather the damage a little bit better. Other things I would be looking at would be the Hotel Yankee. This damage caused by ramming an enemy plus 50%, damage received when ramming an enemy -20%. So you can get some die-hard achievements possibly if your opponent is not running this. Otherwise, what else to possibly recommend here? I mean, you could bump up your secondary range. Right now it's 5.9. We could get that out to 6.2. Our AA is 62. Take the AA combat signal, bumps up to 64. Let's pop open the AA defense and just see how that changes. So you see 186 to 196, and then 1,400 to 1,470. So this isn't like a really good AA tier 7 battleship. Like 8s will stroke crap on you. You can do okay with 6s. If the CV player, of course, is bad, kind of like the one we had yesterday, it wasn't too difficult for us to deal with him. I think he was a tier 6 CV. I don't remember right now. So you could take some flexibility there. Another thing you might think about is maybe you're running to improve your fire chance, so you can go from a 41 to 42%. Yeah, you could actually, if you were to drop one of these, oof, that's tough. I mean, let's say you don't intend on ramming because you're not like a send up, then you could drop that one probably, and then you can get yourself up to a 43% chance. So just some different options there. Getting into the commander, so this is, I don't know how to say his name, Sa Zhenbing, something like that. And he is a unique commander. It comes with some talents and some enhanced skills here in the game. One of those being, if you get Combat Scout, which you're not likely to get, of course, in Teng, you can get a -20% on the main battery reload time. It would actually be really fun to get that, but you're really playing the ship in a way that probably not the best. You know, maybe if it's just like an only battleship game, then maybe you can activate that. That'd be funny to get that 33-second reload time down further. You have Torpedo Attack Expert, doesn't apply to us here, we don't have torpedoes. And then you have Emergency Supplies. This activates after every 1.5 million hit points of potential damage earned. And your ship consumable preparation and reload time is going to drop by -6.5%. So if you're able to tank enough damage, this actually works out really well with the Emergency Repair Specialist, which is another reason why I've taken this as a 1-point skill. But that means, you know, as a can be activated skill, you have to be able to tank 1.5 million damage. I've gotten close, but I've not activated it yet. Depends on the tier. If you're seeing more tier 8s and 9s, you're probably going to activate this. So that's actually more helpful, in my opinion, to be able to have here then, if you find yourself in said scenario. Other than that, you have the 2 enhanced skills of the Emergency Repair Specialist. As I said, -4% rather than -3%. And then we have a Vigilance skill, a Torpedo Acquisition Range. I think rather than it's +25%, it's +35%. And then you have a +7%, which I think is the same regardless if it's a unique commander or not, +7%. So I'll talk more about that here in just a moment. But now let's go ahead and get into builds I would recommend doing here. I think there's maybe like 3 possible options you can go for here. I'll show you the one I'm going for right now. Could change, but I'll just go ahead and show you what I'm thinking, but it could change. So first off is I've taken Emergency Repair Specialist just because I want to take it with this commander. And in my head right now, I'm actually trying to remember, I'll put it in here on the screen of how to obtain this commander. I don't know if he came from containers or it's not a campaign, I don't believe so. I'm spacing right now how to obtain him, so I'll just put it on the screen if you're wondering. So I've taken Emergency Repair Specialist as our 1-point skill. And then we really have to get the turret traverse down from 60 to what it is now, 50 seconds. A lot better. Definitely helpful. I can imagine skipping Grease the Gears completely on Teng because 60 seconds would be abysmal, especially when you're trying to use your high precision spotter and shoot a target-rich environment. A 6-point skill, commander, I went for Adrenaline Rush, so we're getting our main battery reload time down more, which is really helpful, so then you can begin to see 32, 31, 30-second reload time as examples. For a 10-point build, then I would recommend taking Fire Prevention Expert, at risk of catching fire -10%, maximum number of fires -1. So if you're newer to the game and you're not really sure entirely how fire prevention works, I mean, one is you have a 10% less chance of being caught on fire. The other big thing here is if you don't have fire prevention, all ships can have 4 fires aboard, 1 on the bow, 1 on the stern, and 2 on the superstructure. Fire prevention reduces you down to 3 fires rather than 4 fires. So you won't have 2 fires on your superstructure, you only have 1, right? And most players are, if they're spamming high explosive at you, they're shooting this area of your ship. So then you're going to tick for less damage. So it's going to increase the amount of hit points you're going to have during the game. Rather than having 2 fires on your superstructure, it's just going to become 1. So in my opinion, like that's really ideal. It's one of the, like on 95% of the battleships in the game, you want to take Fire Prevention Expert, and that's the same here with the Teng Shi. Next, I took the Concealment Expert to drop us down to a 13.6. I think technically it's 13.56 kilometer range. But not that that really matters. So you're getting detectability by that 13.6 by sea and 9.4 by air, and then varying depending on the depths of submarines that may possibly attack you. Next thing we're going to go for is the Survivability Emergency Repair Expert. It's a plus 10% on the damage control party consumable action time, and then a plus 10% on the repair party consumable action time, and we go from 3 repair parties to 4 repair parties once we've mastered this skill. So if I'm showing you here, so you'll go from like 15 seconds to 16.5 second action time, and then you go from 28 to, I think it's a 30.8. I think it's 30.8 action time on your repair party. So you're increasing your health, you're giving yourself, ticking an extra 1.5 seconds for your damage control party being activated, which is great, it's convenient. And then from here, things can change depending on how you want to break down your remaining points here. So we have 3 points left to spend. One could be you go for basics of survivability, which essentially what you're doing here, because modular restoration time, that will be a negative 15%. So you get like your main battery guns, that type of thing, back off of cooldown faster. But then you're putting out fires and floods faster. It's really more probably the fires you're looking for. So this skill syncs really well with these combat signals and this upgrade. Sometimes you're trying to find some synchronization with your build. Other times it's not as pertinent. This is, if you are taking like Synap, I'd be like, oh, you probably want to take this, or maybe you would want to take improved repair party readiness, which just increases or reduces the more potential damage you take. 100% of the ship's base HP, your repair party consumable comes off cooldown faster, and then if you reach 2 million potential damage, you'll get another repair party, which I think may be a little more harder perhaps to do with Teng Shi. This depends on how much potential damage you're able to tank. But that's not really the case with this battleship. This is where I kind of like, I could see myself kind of maybe going some other ways here as well. I reference Brisk. This battleship, because it's not a frontline battleship, it's not a first line, it's more like a second line battleship. And what I mean by that, like you have destroyers in the game who are your scouts, they have the best concealment. If I'm talking like tier 9, maybe it's like Yugamo, maybe Fletcher, right? Then you have other destroyers like at tier 9, something like the Groningen, Friesland. They have worse concealment, and maybe you play slightly further back behind them. They're a second line destroyer to support the front line destroyer, and that's kind of the same vibe that I get with Teng Shi. It's not a first line battleship, it's more of like a second line battleship. And with Brisk, you're playing around your concealment. So Brisk improves your ship speed by plus 10%. So if we're 28.4, I'll put the calculator on my phone here. Come on. I moved the calculator app on my phone. Times 1.1, then you're going to 31.24 knots. So this helps, I would say, definitely in higher tier meta. If you're bottom tier using tier 8s and tier 9s and you get pulled into the bigger maps, then there's a lot more distance to cover. And you're wanting to play around your concealment. And that's especially so because this ship doesn't have a fast reload time, right? It's 33 seconds. So that makes the value of Brisk quite good here. So that's why I'm like, I think I'm actually going to end up going for Brisk. You know, you certainly could do this, but I think Brisk has a higher value here on Teng Shi because it's a mid to long range battleship. You're wanting to play mid range, I say typically in the game, let's say tier 7 and up, it's like 12 to 15, 16 kilometers. And that kind of works here because it's 13.6 is your conceal, right? So you're really wanting to play about 14 kilometers away. And then once you go dark, you know, you have some increased speed. So that's good. And then let's say you were going to go for Brisk. What would you go for next? Well, it's kind of ironic because I kind of didn't like the skill for the ship so much when I was first thinking about it. And that is the gun feeder. Because I'm like, oh, you know, just fire armor piercing. But the fire chance, like Mia illustrating getting arsonist the other day, like because of having that 33-second reload time, it's really frustrating. Like let's say you're 10 seconds in, you know, let's say you're down to 23 seconds reloading, and that battleship that's gone broadside has now gone bow in or he's stern away. Then I was like, then maybe I want to switch to my high explosive, right? And get that 41% chance or 43% chance if you're taking the combat signals from increasing your fire. Then it's like, you know, then I begin to see the value more for gun feeder here because you have such a long reload time, right? The target can shift its positioning quite quickly, or maybe you have your spotter plane up and you're 20 seconds in and then a destroyer spots up, right? And then like, I want to switch from my armor piercing to my high explosive, or vice versa, a cruiser pops up broadside and you want to switch from high explosive to armor piercing. So this has a little more value than I initially was thinking at first glance. And you can see even Wargaming recommends it as a recommended skill. The other thing you could go for is Consumable Specialist, negative 7.5%. The only thing this is going to do is this get your spotter plane, high precision spotter plane, off cooldown that much more quickly. So you could take that. That would bring you down to like, oh, I don't know, would it be around 101 seconds, 102? Maybe it's like 100, maybe it's more like 105 second cooldown time. So that's actually nice, because that's kind of one of the gimmicks of this boat, right? Is that high precision spotter plane. So I don't know how I feel about it. Honestly, I think I would prefer going for gun feeder at this point, because I like emergency repair specialist feeding into the emergency supplies. If we manage to get a negative 6.5% on preparation reload time of our consumables, so yeah, and I might have to think about that combo more, but I like it so far. So this is probably what I'm thinking of doing here on the Teng. Of course, you could certainly do this. You could go for improved repair party, but I don't think you get too much value because it's not a frontline battleship. You could go for this. That'd probably be the second main option I'd recommend. Maybe you could do that. I don't know. Maybe you give up. If you don't have, you're not running this commander that doesn't have the enhanced skill, you know, it's just negative 3%, then maybe you're like, maybe I want to do gun feeder. You don't need preventive maintenance because your main battery turrets are so thickly armored with that 400mm. I don't need to know about incoming fire further away. And then the demolition expert, you know, that's just going to put you a plus 1% on your fire chance. And then the other skill I needed to talk about was something maybe like vigilance, because it extends your torpedo acquisition range. I think it would only make sense to take vigilance if you were going to take prop propulsion mod, because even if you see the torpedoes coming, like, unless you have the ability to propel yourself out of the way, there's not really, I don't know, necessarily as big of a point at taking vigilance. What I find that my concern is if people take vigilance, then they start ignoring torpedo threats from destroyers, because they're like, oh, like, I know, you know, I'll just know when the torpedoes are coming, and then I'll try to avoid them then, right? And it's like, you know, if you had hydro, that would be one thing, then that's definitely much more value. But I would wrestle with this, and I think you probably get more meaning out of brisk over vigilance. So that could be another option you could play around with. But otherwise, it's a pretty standard battleship build overall. Most battleships are something like this. Otherwise, you'll find some differences between the gun feeder, if you're a secondary battleship, prevent maintenance, so on and so forth. But I think I've talked myself into doing this build. I think there's more value out of taking those 3 points and spreading them between these two skills versus just like basics of survivability as an example. So those are my thoughts. I'm still going to be playing the ship more, as I talked about or I pinned a comment on Friday's highlight video. I think the ship definitely has a lot of potential. It's very Jekyll and Hyde depending on matchmaking, if you're going against tier 9s or tier 5s. I really want to play this ship in tier 7 ranked. If you're only tier 7 ranked, I think you could do a lot of meaningful damage here with the ship. So that being said, if you liked today's video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Subscribe if you do want to see more. If you're subscribed, thanks so much. I would appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.